Good evening all and welcome. Tonight we're going to be heading into the attic for a chilling collection of scary stories. So I hope you're ready because it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. In early 2013 I was 17 and freshly moved out with my mum after she finally left my stepdad. He threatened to kick me out too many times for too many reasons. My curfew, my attitude, me being bi, the usual. I wasn't a bad kid. I worked, I went to school, and minded my own business. But that house never felt safe. So when she left, I left with her. We found this old place, a converted barn, split into 4 apartments. Ours was one of the upper units. I sat back from the main road down a long driveway in the middle of a quiet field, surrounded by trees and a few half-dead buildings that looked older than the country itself. The place was weird, but it was cheap. I agreed to cover a third of the rent, around $400 a month, on my $7.50 an hour fast food job. Between that, school, and what little social life I clung to, I was rarely home. My mum was the same. She worked full-time at Wawa 45 minutes away, and was taking classes, and had a boyfriend a few towns over. So it was mostly just us and our cat. From the beginning, things felt off. We laughed it off at first. Maybe the place was haunted. The hallway lights would flicker, doors would lock on their own, small things would disappear or turn up in weird spots. Sometimes the pantry door would be locked from the inside, same with the closet in my mum's room. We blamed each other, or the cat, or a Civil War ghost, since the place supposedly sat near one of the bloodiest battlefields outside of Gettysburg. The tension built slowly. Dumb arguments started. Did you finish off the Cheez-Its? You definitely smoked the last bowl. Why is the litter box flipped over? No one ever admitted to anything. One day I was fed up, tired of my mum dipping into my stash and sick of second-guessing my own memory. I set up a simple string trap across the door. Nothing fancy, just a trip line that would pop loose if the door was opened. I was going to prove she was doing it. That night before my shift ended, my mum called to say she'd been asked to cover a double, and she wouldn't be home at all, and did I have bus fare to get back? I did. When I got home, the trip line was broken. The weed, a little lighter. I stared at the door for a long time. My throat went dry. Something about it didn't seem right. Not like a gotcha prank. More like I was being watched. That's when I heard a soft but unmistakable shuffling above my head. There's no attic in our unit, just a weird painted-over ceiling panel in the pantry we couldn't open. I froze, grabbed my pepper spray, and quietly gathered up my stash and hid it outside. Then I sprinted across the street to the Burger King and called 911. My hands were shaking. My whole body felt wrong, like my bones were humming with fear. The cops came pretty fast. I was already trying to walk it back, apologizing and embarrassed. I told Officer Jones I was probably just paranoid. Maybe I was tired, maybe it was nothing. But they took it seriously. One stayed with me while the others searched the unit. I was still on the phone with my mum when it happened. The front door of the apartment suddenly burst open, and I heard a struggle, and then I saw it. A husky bearded man was fighting a cop at the top of the stairs, just inside the threshold. He had one hand still clamped on the door frame, like he was trying to stay in the house. I'll never forget that. He broke free, bolted to the left across the porch, hopped a short wooden fence, and vanished into the field and was gone. The officers chased him but came back empty-handed. That's when things got really dark. They did a full sweep of the apartment. In the bathroom, around the drain of the shower, they found traces of semen on our loofahs, on our razors, and I nearly threw up right there in the kitchen. The pantry? Turns out the sealed attic panel had been chipped at and pried open, probably months before we ever moved in. The guy had been living up there, hiding in the attic, the closet, and the pantry, waiting until we left to come out, to eat our food, use our shower, and smoke my weed. He was squatting in our walls, living inside our lives. He probably played with our cat. He definitely saw and heard things he never should have. It still haunts me. This wasn't just a break-in. It was a slow invasion, and I ignored every sign. I joked about it, I even blamed the cat. After that, my mum's new boyfriend moved in. I was home even less, and to this day I still can't relax when I hear a house settle, and I sleep with Mace. I never walk into a room without checking every corner first, and yeah, maybe he wasn't violent, but the psychological damage, the violation, that doesn't go away. He left his filth all over things I put on my body. My private space was never private, and I'll never know for sure how long he watched us, me, what he saw, and what he planned to do. So please trust your gut. Call your cops, hide your weed if you have to, sure, but don't wait. Don't be afraid of looking paranoid, because this stuff isn't just urban legends. It happened to me. I grew up in the South, mostly around Fort Worth, Texas, and Montgomery, Alabama. My parents always chose homes on the fringe of suburbia, where development faded into pasture. They wanted me to grow up with some rural grounding, no city kid attitude. At least, that's what they hoped. Every house we lived in sat close to ranch land or open farmland. It wasn't unusual to find a tarantula crawling across the driveway or a rattlesnake in the grass. The Gulf Coast region has its own kind of wilderness and interesting geography. But let's get back to this story. From 1992 to 1995, I was an only child. My mother stayed home. She was a school teacher who emphasized reading early. And by the time I was 3, I was flipping through Dr. Seuss and animal books like my life depended on it. I had this one glow-in-the-dark animal skeleton book. I used to charge the pages under a lamp, then crawl into the hallway closet, shut the door behind me, and sit in pitch darkness to watch the bones glow. I found it oddly calming. It became my private sanctuary, and the dark didn't scare me yet. I mean, I had my lights in the book. But that changed one afternoon at our first house. I was in the closet, reading Harold and the Purple Crayon, flashlight in hand, when something shifted. The silence I loved turned dense like it had mass. My ears rang. Then came goosebumps. Something had changed. I fled screaming, and my parents chalked it up to my imagination and told me I loved the closet and that I was fine. And for a little while I believed them. But after that day, for a reason I didn't yet understand, I couldn't bring myself to step inside the closet. We moved shortly after. A duplex across town, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath again. This time I got the bedroom with the attic-esque closet. I still don't know why my parents did that to me. Maybe they thought it would help me get over my fear. The first night I slept there is mostly blacked out in my memory. I remember screaming, the closet door creaking open, and running into my parents' room in a full-blown panic. After that, I almost never slept in that room again, and I became a permanent fixture on the floor beside their bed. They thought I was going through a phase, but every night like clockwork, as soon as I heard my dad start snoring, that closet door would begin to open on its own, and I'd stare at it frozen until I couldn't take it anymore and ran crying into their room. One night, my dad agreed to sleep beside me. He said we'd watch the door together. I passed out from sheer exhaustion, and when I woke up in his arms the next morning, it was the first time I'd felt safe in weeks. But the closet wasn't finished with me, though. One afternoon, I was sitting on the floor playing with my stuffed animals, back turned to the closet, when I heard the doorknob rattle. I turned and saw the door crack open, and as soon as I made eye contact with the darkness inside, it slammed shut, loud and final. That's when I realized it didn't matter if it was night or day. This thing didn't care. From that point on, I refused to turn my back to it. I was paranoid and on edge, constantly within arm's reach of my parents. At 3 or 4 years old, I felt hunted, like I was living in a lion's den just waiting for the next pounce. Eventually, I met the 2 boys whose parents were friends with mine. One day during a playdate, they dared me to sit in the closet with them, lights off, door shut. I didn't want to, but I was desperate to feel normal again and for that feeling of acceptance, so we did it. At first it was quiet, and for a fleeting moment I relaxed and let myself believe everything had been in my imagination. Then one of them yelped, accusing the other of pinching him. Then again, they argued. Then the youngest screamed and threw the door open. We all bolted out of that room and into the kitchen like something was chasing us. His forearm had a long, raised scratch, one clean, fresh claw mark. No one had touched him, and the closet door, when my mum had checked, was shut. After that, everything changed. The boys wouldn't go near the basement at home anymore. The neighbor's girl next door, who shared a wall with my room, started screaming in the night, and my dad even ran over once thinking we were being robbed. Turns out one sister had gone to the bathroom, the other one still in bed, and said something tried to drag her by the hair. By the end of that summer, none of us were sleeping. We'd nap outside on the trampoline during the day, because night felt like something we had to survive. I was sunburnt, sleep-deprived, and terrified. Then came the last night. My parents were packing the U-Haul that was out front. My mum was folding clothes in the bedroom while I clung to her leg like a lifeline. We kept walking back and forth between the trunk and the house, and every time I passed my bedroom I saw the closet door slowly creak open and slam shut again when I looked directly at it. Finally, my mum, frustrated, walked over to the door to prove there was nothing there, and I saw her face freeze. Then came a slam louder than ever before. She screamed, scooped me up and ran to the truck, told my dad we weren't staying the night. And that night we slept at a Super 8 with every light on, and wouldn't let me go. When I told her, "I told you so," she just stroked my face and said nothing. We didn't speak about it for a long time, and if she speaks about it, she'll just mention she'd never liked that house. My dad claims he slept in the U-Haul that night after packing. There were a few things left to pack in the morning, but neither my mum or I went to retrieve them. It was a task my dad had to undertake alone. He went throughout the house doing what he called a sweep, trying to find any missing items so that we could finally be rid of that house. As he made his way to my bedroom, he noticed the closet door open. He looked around the room and then, dutifully, opened the closet door. There was nothing inside, but that's when he noticed something none of us had ever noticed before. At the very top, there was a hatch, quite similar to the one in the room, that led up to the attic, but this one we'd never noticed before. I'm not sure how we missed it. Maybe because there was a box there or something and no one had ever seen it. But whatever the reason, point being, it was there, and open. My dad stared into the dark abyss of the attic. None of us had ever been up there, and just as he was staring into the darkness, the hatch of the attic slammed itself shut. There was nothing to pull it up, and then, shortly after, the closet door slammed closed. He fled from that house. He was pretty sure he had everything, but whatever he didn't have was probably worth leaving behind, just to never have to go into that place again. We drove away. My dad and I didn't speak about it for years when he revealed this final detail to me. Up until that day, he wasn't particularly scared of the house, despite what I told him. But after he finally understood, he believes that whatever darkness lived in that house, whatever was taunting me from the closet, was coming from the attic. My name is Sharon, and I think my dorm room is haunted. Not the whole building, specifically just my room, maybe the hallway too. Let me get into it though. The dorm has a reputation. People talk about it. It's something that's well known. And I'm the only one who's actually experienced anything directly. The first time it happened was pretty mild. I'd gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, mostly to just cough without waking up my roommate. I had a bad cold and was trying to be considerate. When I came back, I popped a cough drop and sat in bed, kind of upright, chewing on it, so I wouldn't fall asleep and choke. And that's when I heard it. 2 very light knocks on the door, so light it was like someone tapping with one finger, almost polite, almost uncertain. Then, barely louder than a breath, I heard a whisper through the wood. "Let me in." I froze. I leaned over to peek at the bottom of the door, expecting to see shadows. Someone standing in the hallway, but there was nothing. And I waited. 2 more faint knocks, then silence. The next day I asked everyone on my floor if anyone had gotten locked out the night before, maybe too embarrassed to wake their own roommate, but no one had. No one admitted to it. Everyone swore they'd rather bang their own door than knock on someone else's. I let it go. Told myself it was a dream, probably stress or sleep deprivation. But then about a month later I got brave. A couple friends and I decided to check out the attic. The cleaning lady told us it was haunted. "You should see the crosses drawn inside the windows, taped up so no one can see in," she said. Naturally, we had to look. We didn't see anything, but the second I stepped into the space, the hair on my neck stood on end. I felt like I was walking into someone else's room without knocking, like we weren't supposed to be there. That night, and for the next 2, neither my roommate nor I could sleep. And I mean at all. We were bone tired from working out, but we just sat there wired and restless. We never even talked about it until later, but we both blamed it on the same thing. We think something followed us down. The 3rd time was about a month and a half ago. I woke up early at around 5 a.m. lying on my side, facing the wall. I heard someone very, very quietly opening the dresser drawer. Slow, careful pulls over and over. It went on for several minutes. I assumed it was my roommate getting ready to leave early, so I went back to sleep. When I finally got up around 7, she was still in bed. I asked her if she'd been up earlier, if she'd open up the drawers, and she just blinked and said, "No, why?" She doesn't sleepwalk, never has. I'm the one with the sleep-talking, night movement reputation. But she's always been a quiet sleeper. The most recent time, that one shook me. My roommate's mum was visiting, so she stayed with her in a hotel, and I had the room to myself. I went to bed like normal, but around 2 or 3 in the morning I woke up suddenly. First thing I heard was this loud slamming sound like glass being hit, maybe the window, then pacing, softly but heavy, footsteps across the room. Then I swear to God, I heard someone sit down, a quiet, purposeful shift of weight, and then chewing. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I kept my body absolutely still, playing dead, hoping whatever it was wouldn't notice me. I lay there stiff as a board, listening to the chewing, to the footsteps, to the silence that would come in between. Eventually the sounds stopped. I must have passed out from fear or exhaustion, and that's when the dream started. In the dream I woke up and the room had been destroyed. The walls were covered in scribbles and gorges, posters torn, furniture overturned, and there were these little hand-drawn signs tacked everywhere. Sloppy, frantic scrawl like a child had made them that said things like IGKYN or OID. In the dream, my brain translated it instantly as, "I'm going to end you," and I woke up drenched in sweat. I know the difference between dreams and waking life. I was fully completely awake for those knocks, the voices, the drawers, the pacing, the chewing, all of it. When this all started, it was kind of a joke. I liked telling people we had a ghost. It felt playful, a little creepy, sure, but fun? No. Now after that night, I don't want to sleep here anymore. I'm scared of my own room. and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. This happened when I was around 9 or 10. It was the first time I stayed the night at my friend Catherine's house. We'd met the summer before, and ever since then we'd been inseparable. Best friends the way only kids can be. Kat lived out on a dirt road deep in the woods, in this old 2-story house that looked like it hadn't been cared for in decades. To give you a better idea, the shutters were falling off, the paint was bleached and peeling, and it looked like something out of a horror movie. But I was a weird kid and that excited me. Still, I remember standing outside and staring at that house for what felt like 20 minutes, but was probably mere seconds. When I finally walked in, the inside surprised me. It was way nicer than the outside. The furniture was clean, there were warm lights, a working TV. I pushed down the nerves in my stomach and chalked it up to first-time jitters. But the smell inside was what stuck with me. Not rot nor filth, just old, musty, like a room that hadn't been opened in years. I started to wander a little, just curious, but noted her mum standing down the hall watching me. I smiled and waved. She didn't smile back. She just stood there rigid, wide-eyed, staring at me. Before I could say anything, Kat came tearing down the corner and tackled me into the hug. We hit the floor giggling, and when I looked up, her mum was gone, just gone. Later that night, Kat and I were curled up on a giant beanbag in her room, watching Children of the Corn. It was one of my favorites. Stephen King flicks were basically my childhood, and we were both horror fans, and that's in part why we clicked so well. We were maybe halfway through the movie when the door across the room slammed shut. We both jumped, laughed, and brushed it off. But then it creaked open and slammed again, harder this time, seconds apart. I stared at the door. I didn't understand how it was moving on its own. The only other person in the house was her mum, or so I thought. "You think it's just your mum?" I asked, but Kat shook her head. "You sure?" That's when she said something that still gives me chills to this day. "My mum isn't home. It's just you and me, silly." "Where's your mum?" "She's at work. She only works a few hours, and she trusts me to stay home." I laughed nervously. I thought she was messing with me. "She is at work. She's always gone when I get home. I stay here by myself." I looked at her, and she must have seen the worry on my face. "What's wrong?" "If your mum's at work, then who was the lady staring at me earlier?" Right then we heard it. Not footsteps exactly, more like a shuffling right above us. I sat completely still, every hair on my body stood up. Kat grabbed my hand. "You heard that right?" I nodded. Then the footsteps again, heavier and faster. They were pacing. We both looked up at the ceiling. "This happens every day." I turned to look at her and her face was pale. She wasn't pretending. She was terrified. "Is it in the attic?" I asked. She pointed to the ceiling. "I kept telling myself it was squirrels or a bird or the wind." But then we sat completely still. And you know how it is when you're quiet enough and you start hearing everything? That's when we heard it. A child's giggle. But Kat didn't have any siblings and we were alone. I was ready to run. Every instinct I had was screaming to get out. I wanted to grab Kat and bolt for the front door, but she pulled me back. "Want to hear a story?" she asked, like none of that had just happened. I didn't answer, so she started anyway. "The house used to be a daycare. There was a woman who watched kids here, and one day she locked them in the attic and took her life in the kitchen. No one found them for months, and all the kids passed away." I wanted to throw up. "It's true," she said. I doubted that. I was pretty sure parents would come looking for their kids, knowing exactly where they dropped it off, but I let my suspension of disbelief follow her for a little longer. I see the kids, but I've never seen the lady. You did. I don't remember what happened after that. I just remember running out of her room and out the front door and not stopping to put my shoes on. Kat chased me after, begging me to stay, but I couldn't. I couldn't even breathe until I was outside. I didn't sleep that night, and when I saw Kat at school the next day, she gave me my stuff and was quite cross that I'd run away when she was so scared. As the years went by, we made other friends and our friendship started to slightly dissolve. I didn't see her much after that, but I remember the times we used to play. I'm 27 now. I looked for her online, old yearbooks, but couldn't find her, not even on Facebook, which I thought was weird. I only started looking because I was driving back home, and I happened to pass by the old house. It looked in worse shape than it ever had, and it led me wondering about Kat. I wonder if that really happened in her house in the attic. There are so many questions I have, but one thing's for sure, I still don't want to go back. This happened when I was 16. I couldn't sleep that night. Something was bothering me that happened at school, and it kept replaying in my mind over and over. For context, mine and my parents' rooms are in the converted attic space. There's a small hallway separating our rooms that leads to the stairs that go down to the rest of the house. I was just managing to drift off when I heard it. This sudden high-pitched noise that made me jump out my skin. It wasn't quite a scream and not quite a laugh. It sounded like a giggle that had gone wrong. I turned on my lamp, heart pounding, but there was nothing in the room. I stood up and turned towards the hallway, and that's when I saw her. A tall woman, standing completely still in the hallway outside my room. Just a shadow at first, like the outline of something that shouldn't be there. My first thought wasn't ghost. It was, is this real? Then came fear. Did she see me? She started walking slowly towards my door. My parents' bedroom was on the other end of the house. If I screamed, would they even hear me in time? I backed away from the door and crouched next to my bed, right beside the nightstand where I kept a bat for self-defense. I grabbed it. My hands were shaking. I crouched there, hidden, waiting. Then I heard footsteps again, this time going down the stairs. I exhaled cautiously, stood, and moved to shut my door. But as I pulled it closed, the heavy wood door slammed into my bare foot, and the pain shot up my leg and I let out a low and involuntary crap. That's when it all turned. The woman who had been halfway down the stairs stopped. Her head snapped around and we locked eyes. She turned and came straight back up. I tried to shut the door, but she got her foot in it before it closed. I stumbled backwards, still clutching the bat. "Your father said everyone was asleep," she said, her voice cold and quiet. "Why aren't you?" I couldn't answer. My mouth moved, but nothing came out. My heart was thudding so hard I thought she'd hear it. She pushed the door open and stepped inside, shoving me back until I fell onto the floor. "You're gonna forget you ever saw me," she hissed, crouching over me. "And you're gonna go to bed, do you understand?" Then, thank God, I heard my parents' bedroom door open. My dad's voice came drifting down the hall. "Shh, Indigo, what the hell are you doing? You're gonna wake your brothers." Then, he saw her. "Sandra? I thought you were leaving." I stared at him from the floor. "You know this creepy witch?" He shot me a look that said, "Shut up or you're dead," then turned to her. "You need to go now." And she left without a word. He closed my door behind him and said low and firm, "Don't tell your mother about this and go to bed." I lay awake for the rest of the night. Around dawn it all clicked. The late-night work trips, my dad acting cagey, the random woman creeping around our house in the middle of the night. He was having an affair. When I woke up again late that morning, my mum had already returned from her trip. I decided not to tell her yet. I figured it would be best to give him a chance to come clean. I said casually over breakfast, "So, Dad, have fun last night?" He nearly choked on his toast. My mum gave me a serious look, but he didn't flinch. Went out for beers with the guys. Everyone was asleep when I got home. Liar. He never told her. So the next time she went out of town and Sandra came sneaking back into our house, I told Mum everything. And they got divorced. In around 2019, I was 25 and struggling financially. So I asked my mum if I could take one of her rooms in order to pay less rent. I moved in. Then soon after, I asked my girlfriend to move in with me to help pay the rent. It was a 4-bedroom house with a studio attached in the back. On one half of our house was my mum in the master bedroom with one of my twin sisters, Carla, of 13. In the other room was a man who was renting a room. On the other half of the home was my sister Janet, 19, with her baby daughter, and my other twin sister Angela. Then finally myself and my girlfriend. Myself and my girlfriend, aside from some wine or mixed drinks on rare occasions, are completely sober. We're the type to just stay home and watch movies. My Catholic family was fairly poor growing up. We are just regular hard-working people. But most of all, we're rational. We don't really care with BS, no previous strange occurrences in any of our lives. And my girlfriend is also Christian. So one night around 8 PM, myself and my girlfriend were in bed, and we were alarmed to hear the most heavy footsteps you can imagine on the roof. It sounded like a big man with boots, and it was very clearly going from corner to corner above our room. I got up and went to investigate. Everything was normal in our house. I went outside expecting to see someone on our roof, probably the back neighbor, but there was nothing. We asked the people in the back. No clue. Me and my girlfriend and our cat were the only ones that heard it. I thought maybe it was someone running away from someone or something, but our roof had that very steep triangle shape, and a few days after again myself and my girlfriend were on our bed when we heard running above us. That time it was quick, light running, a child. This time it was more odd. We went to ask my sister, but nothing. Every so often we'd hear these steps above us, and I started believing we had a person living in our attic. Every time I heard the steps, I'd pop my head into the attic and shine my phone, but there would never be anything. Eventually I climbed all the way up to search. Nothing. No one else had heard them except me and my girlfriend, and it began getting very frustrating. I have anxiety, and have always had trouble sleeping. When I'd hear the steps at night, I'd be very uncomfortable, and when it would wake me up, I'd have trouble falling back asleep. I started getting very angry about the situation. I was a competitive boxer at the time, and sleep was a necessity. Myself and my girlfriend came to the conclusion that it was probably an animal, or a ghost. One day I was alone in the house, and I heard the steps. At this point I was pissed. I said, "Perfect," and rushed my way up to the attic. I crawled around saying, "Here I am, all by myself. What you gonna do about it? What do you want? Show yourself, do something." Nothing. One night, footsteps again, this time around 2 AM. I'm awake now, stress is high. I start doing research on my phone, animal sounds on roofs/walls, etc. Not sounding familiar? No help. Ghosts making footsteps noises equals poltergeist. I researched the history. They're not ghosts, but energy created by us humans. In the past, they believed poltergeists were caused by teenage girls because of their strong emotions. Bingo. My home at the time was a war zone of emotions, anger, sadness, cursing, yelling, and fights. Most of the issues were due to my twin sisters. Angela, especially at the time, was rebelling severely. She started hanging out with some bad kids and drinking and drugging. My mum was strict, so they would fight bad. Once they got into a small fist fight and police were called. Of course, I'd get involved as well. Angela had very strong emotions. I was battling depression at this time due to me being broke. Myself and my mum are bipolar, and my sister Carla was clinically diagnosed as bipolar. While researching, I learned that we could get rid of negative energy by bringing positive energy, aka praying and saging your home. Eventually, as I was up, my girlfriend woke up too. I told her that I'd heard the footsteps again and couldn't go back to sleep, and about all the research I found. She started doing some research of her own. At this point, it was around 15 minutes before 3 a.m, and my girlfriend said out loud, "I'm just waiting for 3 a.m, because that's when the spirits are most active." I took it as a joke and ignored it, but sure enough, at 3 a.m. on the dot, we heard the most aggressive, chaotic and sporadic thumping yet. This time it was happening with no pattern, and it was all over our roof. My girlfriend grabbed my shoulder terrified. I was paralyzed for about 3 seconds. I couldn't believe it. After coming to, I picked up my phone and started recording. Too late. It lasted maybe 4 seconds. All I got on video was my cat freaking out. The video was saved and recorded at 3:01 officially, and this was the turning point. The next day I went to each of my family members one by one, telling them what happened and about the poltergeists. I also told them about what we had done to remove this. I told them that we had to chill out, no more fighting, work on our anger, and to pray together at night. Thankfully, they all took it seriously. We dialed it down, we saged the house, we prayed and read Bible passages at night, sometimes together. I proclaimed to our home that there was no room for negative energy and only positive. We really did a 180. And it worked. After some time, very suddenly, it just stopped. Not a peep. We never spoke about it as a family again. I've been known to be the one of the more responsible of my siblings. Aside from that time being very hard for me emotionally and financially, I have and am doing very well for myself, thankfully. Honestly, I am the only one of my siblings that would have been able to handle this situation and turn it around like I helped do. So I'd like to believe that's the reason why my room was the only one that heard it. Maybe this occurrence happened in order for my family to be more at peace. Myself and Kylie, my wife, are now married with a daughter. We moved into our current home in December of 2023. When we settled in, we held hands and I proclaimed loudly to make sure I was heard that in this house there's no room for negative energy, only positive. My wife did her saging and put oil on the doorway and prayed. And thankfully, nothing bad has happened here. There's a house just outside of Emigrant, Montana, just before the Mill Creek Bridge. You'd miss it if you weren't looking for it. It's a sprawling old ranch home built sometime around the turn of the century. Late 1800s, maybe early 19. Massive, faded clapboard siding. A wide wraparound porch that leans over ever so slightly. It sits on a piece of land so large and quiet. My grandparents raised my dad and his sisters in that house. Aunt Lottie had the attic room growing up. I asked her about it once, just to see if the things I remembered were mine alone, but she didn't hesitate. She said the room ruined her. She used to scream in her sleep, scream loud enough to wake the entire house. Night after night, she dreamed of being held down in her bed, paralyzed while faceless human shapes in crimson robes stood still around her in complete silence. She wasn't frozen in place like in typical sleep paralysis. She thrashed violently, moaning or crying out until my grandmother ran up the stairs to shake her awake. It happened so often, they stopped reacting with panic and it became routine. Eventually, Grandma gave her a crucifix to wear, a small silver thing, nothing ornate, just enough to mean something. And Aunt Lottie wore it constantly, even in the bath. And you know what? The dream stopped. But a few years later, the crucifix vanished. She still doesn't know how. She hadn't taken it off in years. And after that, the dreams returned. The violence, the fear, worse than before. That's when my grandma organized what she called a prayer circle, or what sounded a lot like a rural Montana exorcism. Church members came from all over, some driving for hours. They stood in a circle in the living room holding hands and prayed in whispers and sobs. Some swore they spoke in tongues. They burned sage, hung new crucifixes over doorways. Aunt Lottie stayed in the attic during the prayers and said it felt like the walls themselves were vibrating. But it didn't work. The house wasn't cleansed. It was a bit quieter for a while, and eventually she bought a new crucifix. The second she began wearing it, the dreams faded. Not completely, but enough that she could sleep, and that she could leave the house and try and be a normal person. Years passed. My parents moved in 1998. Dad, mum, and older brother, who was just one, and then me. They were going to run a glass etching business from the house and raise their children there. It was a good plan on paper, but the house had teeth. My parents took the attic. My mum almost immediately started sleeping alone in the living room on a futon, claiming it was because of my dad's snoring. Later, she admitted that the attic gave her migraines. The hallway up there always smelled like burnt dust, and she couldn't really explain it. My brother and I got our own rooms on the opposite ends of the house, but I never slept in mine, not once. I always ended up curled beside my brother or my mum. My room especially felt bad. It wasn't just fear, it was like a presence, like the walls were aware of you. We started having nightmares almost immediately, horrific ones. I had a recurring dream of endless hallways in that house where the doors wouldn't open and something was always just out of sight. My brother sometimes woke up with scratches on his arms. Mum said it was probably just us playing too rough, but we weren't. And then there was my dad. He stayed in the attic. He wouldn't talk about what he saw up there, not for a long time, but almost every night we'd hear it, screaming at the top of the lungs. Animal screams, like someone being ripped open. He'd wake up in a cold sweat yelling our names, and my mum would go up, and we'd sit downstairs to hear him cry. This went on for years. Eventually, my dad changed. It didn't happen all at once, but little by little. He stopped smiling. He worked too much. He looked hollow, like his body was there, but there was something behind his eyes that was missing. I think the house did it to him. Oh, and the basement was worse. Mouldy, steep steps, a crumbling concrete floor. There was a cellar door that opened out into the yard, splintered wood that stuck in the snow, and my mum did her work down there. For hours, sometimes entire days, and she said it felt like being watched by something low to the ground. In 2004, we moved out. A wealthy man bought the land and rented out rooms to fly fishermen, but the land always felt off. A few years ago, I drove past the place. Someone else lives there now. The windows glow red at night. I don't know if that's by choice or not. The hauntings never fully left us, though. My dad kept having night terrors for years after. My mum developed sleep paralysis, and I did too, frequently, and still do. I'll wake up frozen in bed, unable to breathe, something crouched on my chest, whispering in a language I do not understand. I see things sometimes in my peripheral vision, just a shape, black, hunched and watching. My cousin, Aunt Lottie's daughter, told me she has it too, sleep paralysis and nightmares. She's never lived in that house, but she's visited a lot. Maybe that was enough. Last week, my dad passed away at only 50. The day he died, the sky was cold and grey. But the moment he passed, the sun came out, and it cut through the clouds in a way I'll never forget. I don't really know what I believe. I wasn't raised to believe in anything, but my Aunt Lottie called me at 4 a.m. today shaking and crying. She found her original crucifix, the one that vanished 30 years ago. It was in a box in her closet, tangled in a string of broken beads. She gave it to her daughter, and she's mailing me the second one, the one that helped her sleep again, to me. I'll wear it, not because I believe in God, but because something out there saw me once, and I'm not sure if it ever looked away. This story's from a while back, and I'm still confused as to what had happened for those few nights. Let me set the scene. When I was younger, my parents would send me up to Russia to visit family. After that, I spent the whole summer with the family in Dacha. This was deep in the woods, quite far from the nearest city. But the Dacha itself was in what is best described as a small village of about 16 or so streets with 2 major roads between the sections. These major roads weren't paved or anything, they were just the biggest. So this was where most people would drive their cars. Then after the 2 major roads were miles and miles of deep Russian woods. Our dacha was technically 1 floor, but you could go up into the attic, which had 2 small rooms, which is where I slept. That year was one of the years when FIFA was playing. I remember this vividly because that first night I was lying in the attic, listening to my extended family shout and laugh over the gameplay. Finally, after what felt like forever, the game ended, and everyone went off to bed. I, however, in my infinite wisdom, decided to stay up. What was I doing? Who knows, but I was awake. That night was a hot night, unusually hot, so I had both windows open to allow a breeze to go through the 2 rooms. At some point I realized that I needed to use the bathroom. This was an issue, seeing as the bathroom was outside on the other side of the property. As I was about to get up, I had a wave of nausea hit me. Lying back down, I then noticed an odd noise. Hooves. They were distant at first, but then grew louder. While I could have easily written off the noise, none of the elk, deer, or even moose would go anywhere near the settlement. As the noise came closer, I couldn't sate my curiosity, and slowly inched up my bed. As I was about to move the curtain, I had a sense of dread come over me. I was terrified. Of what, I had no clue. As I pondered, I realized the sound of hooves was right under my window. They paced in a circle underneath and wouldn't leave. There was no curiosity left within me, just confusion, and that continued terror. I inched my way back down the bed and lay under the thick covers as I tried to sleep. I stayed that way till the first sign of light, at which point the sound disappeared. I remember not if they walked away or if the sound just vanished, but either way it was strange. By the time everyone was up, I thought nothing of it, and just felt it was a strange occurrence. Then came the night. Once everyone was asleep, the sound returned, and with it the terror. By morning it was gone, and being the young teen I was at the time, I ignored it still. The next night it came again. Under my window it paced as I lay in bed, shivering under the covers, listening to whatever was walking in circles. By morning it was gone. 3 nights was enough for young me, and after that, instead of telling anyone, I decided to just go to sleep before everyone else. After that night I didn't hear anything, but I cannot tell you if it didn't come back, or I just didn't wake up for it. Either way, I have no idea what it was, and if anyone thinks they do, I would love to hear it. I was 10 when we moved into the old farmhouse. It sat just outside of town. The house itself was built in 1902. It had 2 stories and a weather-beaten exterior that always looked grey, even on sunny days. Upstairs there were 3 bedrooms and a large common area in the middle, a wide open space that should felt like freedom but didn't. My room sat directly between the other 2, and for some reason it didn't have a door, just an empty frame. I always found that quite unsettling. One night, not long after we moved in, I was laying in bed facing the hallway. I didn't have my glasses on. My prescription was awful back then, so everything beyond a few feet turned into watery blur. But I saw a girl about my age or a little older, wearing what looked like a white nightgown, walking past my doorway with a strange, gliding kind of calm. I thought it was my sister, so I called her name, but the girl didn't stop, not even flinch. She just kept walking like I hadn't spoken at all. My brain caught up a second later, realized that something was wrong with the way she moved, and with a complete lack of acknowledgement, I felt the panic crawl up from my stomach into my throat. I didn't even wait for her to disappear down the hall. I rolled over to face the wall and shut my eyes so hard my head ached. I didn't remember falling asleep. Just the weight of knowing something had been there was enough to creep me out. That was the first time. The second time came a few weeks later. I was home with just me and my twin brother, just the 2 of us. We were downstairs in the living room, which sat directly beneath the upstairs common area. It was late. We heard at first a soft thud, then another, then pacing and deliberate footsteps walking back and forth across the upstairs floor. It went on for a few minutes. We stared at the ceiling and didn't say a word, just listened to something unseen, wearing a path into the hardwood above our heads. Then we bolted, ran to the far end of the house and hid behind a couch like 2 terrified 11-year-olds clinging to each other in the dark. When our parents got home, we told them what happened. My dad didn't laugh it off. He just nodded quite seriously. And that was the moment I realized he must have seen things too. He told us he'd seen an old man in the house before, standing in the hallway upstairs. Once he said, he looked out towards the edge of the field and saw another figure just watching. Too far to make out a face, but close enough to know they weren't supposed to be there. We didn't stay long after that. Our next house was a 1950s-style rancher in a quieter town, smaller, newer, and less history. This one had an attic that was only accessible through a small flight of stairs tucked inside one of the bedrooms. That bedroom, of course, became my twin brother's. My room was right next to it, right on the other side of the wall with the stairs. One night I was in bed trying to sleep when I heard the unmistakable sound of someone walking up those stairs, step by step, wood creaking with pressure. I groaned and yelled at my brother to knock it off. He was keeping me up. A moment later, my mum opened the door to my room. She looked confused. "Your brother's in the living room with me," she said. "He hasn't gone upstairs." We stood there in silence, listening to the last few steps creak and fall still. She didn't go to check, just looked down the hallway like she already knew nothing would be there. That house didn't have the same kind of shadows as the last one. I never saw full figures, not exactly, but I did start to notice dark spots and shapes in the corner that would shift ever so slightly when you looked at them too long. Movement that didn't belong to anything solid. It felt like the house was hiding something just out of view. Then my dad got a new job and we moved again just an hour away. Another rental, nothing special on the outside, but there was something wrong on the inside. My bedroom didn't have its own closet. Instead, I had to share a large walk-in with my parents, an awkward setup that meant walking down the hall and across their room anytime I needed something. That closet from the very first day made me sick to my stomach. I mean, literally. If I stood in front of it for too long, something in my gut would start to churn, an anxious nausea that felt like it was being pulled out of me. Going inside was worse, like the air shifted the second you crossed the threshold, like something pressed against your skin and whispered low enough to make your ears ring. Eventually I told my dad. I didn't expect him to take it seriously, but he did. He looked me square in the eyes and said, "Yeah, I've seen it too." I asked what he meant. "There's something in that closet. It's not like the old man in the farmhouse. This one's different. It's bad. I don't like going there." After that, we never spoke of it again. But I never forgot what he said. I lived in a dozen places since then. But sometimes I'll get nightmares about these places, and I'm glad I no longer live there. I think I was around 3 years old when this happened. For context, I don't believe in ghosts, and this is the only paranormal experience in my life I can think of. Some years ago, my mum's partner got me a toy cat that he received from a friend. It was very realistic, with fur, ran on batteries, and after turning it would meow, purr, and move its head, etc. After I grew up, I kind of forgot about it, and it ended up on a shelf in the attic. One day I went there because there are a lot of old books from my childhood or earlier that are in the same room as the cat was. I spent a good amount of time reading them, at least an hour. Of course, the cat was turned off the whole time. But then it turned on. It started meowing, and meowing so much after being turned off I immediately freaked out. So it could have been my brain playing tricks on me. But I think after that, I heard something like steps coming from the other room. I ran down the stairs and told my grandfather. He said maybe it was him who turned the cat on. Of course he didn't. It was off for at least an hour, and then it suddenly turned on by itself. For years nothing really happened in this regard, but lately the cat disappeared. None of my family members know what happened to it. It was lying down on the shelf for years, and then one day, I heard them looking for it. Well, that's something that can be explained. One of my family members could forget they took it somewhere, but the first one really can't be. I've had unexplainable things happen to me for as long as I can remember. Even now, in adulthood, I still see flickers in the corner of my eyes. But it all started in the house I grew up in. An old 2-story home tucked away in the Griffith Park neighborhood of LA. The house belonged to my grandparents before it became ours. My grandpa passed away before I was born, and my grandma, not wanting to live alone, gave the main house to my mum on the condition that she stayed in the adjoining duplex. The duplex was its own apartment connected to the main home by a door just to the left of the front entrance. My grandma lived there my entire childhood. She never moved out. She didn't have to. She said the spirits knew where they belonged, and she made peace with hers long ago. No one told me the house used to be a holistic doctor's residence until I was well into my teens. Before my grandparents moved in, the doctors used the duplex as his office space and exam room, and lived in the main house alongside 2 or 3 live-in nurses. A minor detail, maybe, but somehow it explained everything that came after. When I was around 7 or 8, my dad did a renovation that, without meaning to, set something off. He sealed off a narrow hallway that used to connect the master bedroom to a small room across the house. He built walls on both ends, turning the passage into 2 closet spaces, one for each room, and left a hollow, walled-off corridor sealed in between. That room across the hall, that was mine. I didn't like it from the beginning. There was something wrong about it, wrong in a way I couldn't really articulate as a kid. The air always felt stiff, and I was very uneasy at night. So much so I began sleeping under the bed with a barricade of pillows around me, hoping that whatever was watching wouldn't bother looking underneath the bed. I told my parents I was scared. They chalked it up to too many late-night horror movies with my older sisters. But this wasn't movie fear. This was something far deeper. Near the closet, there was a painting hung on the wall, a gift from my paternal grandfather, a charming image of a cat he'd painted himself. One night while I was asleep on the top of my bed, I woke up to a sudden loud crack. The noise echoed from inside the closet and I shot up, heart racing. The painting had fallen, or so I thought. My dad came rushing in ready to scold me for breaking something. But when we looked closer, the painting was still hanging perfectly on the wall. What shattered was the glass in the frame. Not a typical spiderweb crack, either. It had exploded outwards with such force that glass shards had scattered all the way to the back of the closet nearly 5 feet away. My dad, who was visibly unsettled, muttered something about temperature changes and brushed it off, and I didn't sleep in that room again for a long time. After that night, I began to hear footsteps downstairs when everyone else was in bed. I never said anything. I just assumed it was my dad, who struggled with insomnia, but it wasn't him. I know that now. When my older siblings moved out, I moved to my brother's old room just across from my parents' bedroom. That room had a towering built-in bookshelf and a small closet with a 4x4 wooden square set into the ceiling. An attic hatch, no ladder, no stairs, just a piece of wood separating me from whatever called that place its abode. I never liked that hatch. My dad had removed the closet door long ago, as he caught on to my old trick of hiding messes, so all that separated me from the attic was a curtain strung on a rod. I really didn't like it. I hated the way the curtain would ripple when the air was still, and coming home to find the attic hatch nudged slightly out of place, moved not by gravity, but as though someone had pushed it open from the other side just about half an inch, but always enough to notice. It happened for years. I never told anyone out of fear of being brushed off again. I even convinced myself it was nothing. But then came the night that changed everything. I was standing in front of the closet, petting my dog Duke, a Springer Spaniel with a protective streak a mile wide. He'd been in my shadow since I was 9. My back was to the curtain, and I felt it brush against the back of my calf like someone passed behind me. I looked down and saw the fabric ripple, and I froze. Duke whimpered, and then I felt it. A hand, a real hand, pressing against the back of my leg through the curtain. Not a breeze, not fabric, fingers, and pressure. I didn't look back and ran, and Duke ran with me. We tore through the house like the devil was on our heels, and I collapsed into my dad's arms, crying and shaking. But this time he didn't brush it off. He sat me down and told me his story. Years earlier, he'd been up late in the kitchen reading, when he saw a woman in nurse's scrubs glide through the hallway. Not walk, glide. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him. She just passed through. He said he knew immediately that she wasn't part of the living. She looked like she belonged to the house and not to our world. I've had countless strange things happen since. No matter where I move, wherever it is, this thing follows me. I've learned to live with it, but there's something about that house that lingers in my bones. I think about the sealed hallway, the attic hatch, and that hand that pushed me towards the edge. I know whatever it was came from up there, and I don't know if I believe in ghosts or not, but I know whatever has been stalking me since is still around. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed listening to tonight's attic stories. I am very sorry that this video came out a day late. I will of course be pushing the videos back one day, so tomorrow we have basement and then cabin on Saturday, and the compilation will just launch on Sunday, with more fresh content back on Monday. So yeah, I had a bit of a complication yesterday, so there you go. But we should be good. It'll be basically from today onwards about a week and a half of non-stop content. So I hope you enjoy. If you would like to get some exclusive perks and have your name at the end of the video and your birthday shout out and all kinds of cool stuff, feel free to check out the link to Patreon in the description. But that's it from me. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.